All right, so in this demo I talked about the simplified configuration experience in WCF4, including default endpoints, using protocol mapping, and then demonstrating the simplified binding configuration and behavior configuration in WCF4. So let's just jump right in to the code. We looked at a very simple service implementation here. We have a service contract called iService1, an operation contract that defines a get data operation, returns a string taking a integer value, and then we basically implement that service contract and basically just return the actual value pretty much echoed back. And there's a composite version of that operation contract as well, which I really don't exercise in this demo. If we look at the web.config, the interesting thing here, right, is that there is no service element, there's no endpoint element. So what we do have is a simplified behavior configuration. So if you look at this, what you'll see is that there is no behavior name, so the name attribute is not provided. We are still enabling metadata, and I've decided to not include exception details and faults. And then you'll notice that because there is no service or endpoint element, this service behavior is kind of a default behavior, right? So once it's been defined, it basically assumes, or it is assumed, that it applies to the configuration provided, whether it's a default configuration or not. The easiest way that I've found to explain default endpoints is there's really not a lot of magic going on. Think of it as a non-default constructor, right? So a class always has a non-default constructor. If you want to provide your own constructor, you can do that. If not, then a constructor is going to be provided for you. That's kind of the same idea, right? The service model is going to look at the config and say, hey, there's no service element, there's no endpoint elements listed. I'm going to go ahead and create that service and endpoint for you, that default endpoint for you. And that's pretty much all there is to it. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. So in this example, if we go ahead and just fire this guy up, kind of getting to that, file open or file new F5 experience, what you'll find is that the service is actually going to host itself. The endpoint's going to be inferred, and here shortly we should have this running up in Cassini. Go ahead and click on the service1.svc. And here we go, and if I click on the WSDL, we'll see here that we have a WSDL file that has been defined for the WS HTTP binding. And now the reason for that is because, as we talked about in the session, I'm using this new protocol mapping element. And the protocol mapping element allows me to get a little more finely grained over that default endpoint behavior. So by default, if you don't provide a service or endpoint and you support the HTTP protocol or scheme, that is, your hosting environment supports it, which Cassini does, it would go ahead and create a basic HTTP binding. But because I specified this pairing, it's going to go ahead and use basic, WS HTTP. In fact, let me go ahead and get rid of this completely. And now you'll see an even simpler configuration. I'll go ahead and come back here and just refresh this. And this time you'll see that the service is now basically exposing a basic HTTP endpoint, and it's gone ahead and inferred that based on the binding and the service contract. He knows where he's being hosted, so that piece is pretty easy. So that's kind of cool. The next thing I want to show you is what it looks like when you have multiple hosting capabilities, as is the case with IIS7 Windows Activation Services. So I'm going to go ahead and deploy this to IIS. Now, if I go ahead and right click here, I just want to show you that in addition to HTTP, I have net.tcp and net.pipe. Hit OK here, then we'll just go ahead and browse to the service type. And if I click the link, then we'll see that we have a WSDL, and we also have an endpoint definition for a basic HTTP binding, the net TCP binding, and then last but not least, the name pipe binding. So the default endpoints feature is a very convenient feature for just getting up and running quickly and easily, and really going with kind of a convention over configuration approach for getting your services hosted. So in this demo, I talked about default endpoints, I talked about protocol mapping, and I showed the simplified binding and behavior configuration by simply omitting the name and applying any existing binding or behavior configurations to the existing endpoints, whether they're default endpoints or imperatively or declaratively defined.